Escape to the metaverse. Better act like you know. Yeah. You are now tuned into the Matthew Rizzle show. Yeah. Escape to the metaverse. Better act like you know. Yeah. You are now tuned into the Matthew Rizzle show. Yeah. Escape to the metaverse. Better act like you know. You are now tuned into the Matthew Rizzle show. Yeah. Escape to the metaverse. Better act like you know. You are now tuned into the Matthew Rizzle show. Yeah.
Matt's still drinking coffee. I think we started recording.
Rugs by my own mute button. No, I was like, fuck y'all. I was like, no, Chislett, don't go. Let's have like a throwback session.
We're recording.
As soon as I hit record, he just dips off the stage. Dude.
What's up, dude?
Man, loving all this energy with like behind the scenes with the WIP. The blocks of text. Shout out to Ray and Fractillions. Big discussions happening.
Yeah, man, it's good energy, man. And was just talking with Chislett a little bit before you hopped on that I feel like it's really interesting energy going on in the space amongst the people who have been here for a long time, and I feel like a lot of people are starting to sort of launch their own thing or go off on their own or like lean into the stuff that they had believed in or been believing in this whole time, and I like this like doubling down on the stuff that people have invested a lot of time and energy and sometimes finances in, but the WIP is a good example of that, man. We got like a lot of real good energy going on, and attendance numbers going up in a bear market, and Ray and Fractillions really galvanized to pitch in and help out, and it's sort of interesting, man. I was thinking like yesterday or the day before, the addition of Fractillions and Ray, on the inner of the WIP crew to help out with some of the just stuff, man. There's just a lot of stuff in a lot of places, but we've sort of, come to like a WIP crew, like 2.0 type of thing. And, we've got some like legacy WIP crew members, but you think like all the way back when we started, and shout out Dragonate, who was like, I think the original WIP crew member and still here with us, helping out like all over the place. But we've, we got a lot of legacy people who come back and hang out periodically, thinking all the way back to like Trippy Yogi, but it's cool to have like some fresh people come in who are not new to the space, but new-ish to like the WIP and what we've really got going on here. And I don't know, it's cool to see people come in who like believe in what we're doing, understanding what we're doing, and are genuinely excited about it. And it's good vibes, man.
Yeah, I mean, it gives us a fresh new perspective. Ray coming in, like playing the roulette troubadour played way back in the days, like a metaverse journalist coming in, like taking notes during the WIP, summarizing it, pushing that out on our new blog on Mirror that folks will be able to collect like editions of if they want to. It's just kind of like a fun way, but at the very least, bake into our weekly email newsletter that Dragonate has been organizing and pushing out to everyone that's ever come through to the WIP that's signed the guest book. Like that energy to go in that direction, and then think about like how to refine those things that we're doing is such invaluable perspective, because like we're so in the weeds, we're focused on like the main WIP proper, like going deeper into the metaverse, like what you've been doing together as well with Fractillions, building out ground zero and everything there. Like it just keeps adding to the richness and like weekly outcome that we all see and experience at the actual WIP, and it keeps it fun and fresh. I love the new perspective.
Yeah, man, and I feel like there's a collective sense of like we really got something going here right now, like and multiple people have said that, both like private channels and people have mentioned it on Twitter. Max Osiris mentioned, the addition of the cars, feels like we got something interesting going on here. And it's definitely not just the cars, even though it is like in its current iteration, but you can see where this is going, man. Just us being able to interact with the environment, around us in these events, but in a Web3 native way that utilizes, digital assets and everything, is cool, man. And I think that unlock has excited a lot of people about what we're doing and what we've been preaching for a long time. But I feel like now we have like very visible examples of like interoperability and, all this shit that we've been, sort of talking about this whole time. And yeah, man, it's go ahead. What were you going to say?
No, just co-signing that point. This was the dream from the very beginning, to do things in world. Like we had back in like April 2020, like we really wanted to have in-world audio. Like we didn't want to fuck around with anything else. And Discord just kind of was a happy outcome of a solution. But now, like we had WIPs where we did native audio and rode around monster trucks and raced and things like this, where you don't need anything else. It's just the native experiences are starting to take over, and to get to that point and start to see a glimmer of like a crazy immersive future that we already imagined. It's crazy to actually kind of come to fruition, or start to, at least, almost 4 years later.
Yeah, man, and the people who have come in lately and have been willing to sort of look at what we're doing, identify things that we could do better, that we're honestly not that good at, man. Like, I feel like one of the things why the WIP has had such longevity and been as successful as it has been is because it's very in the moment, man. We don't do a great job of like leading up to the event, post-event marketing, social media, like all this shit, like, that would certainly enhance our events. But because they're so in the moment, because you have to be right there, because, those things we do really well, I feel like has kept it in a way that's sustainable for us. But this is where, and Trizla and I were mentioning this like before the call as well, man. A lot of people, I feel like last hype cycle sort of caught them off guard. And, we were all sort of in it, like, I feel like almost like, I hate this metaphor, but like caught with our pants down or whatever, in terms of like, we just weren't ready, man. Like a lot of stuff wasn't ready. And everyone's, I think, I don't speak for everybody, but myself, and I think a lot of people felt like we were going to be in that building phase for a lot longer, prior to that big hype cycle coming. And so now I feel like this is the time, right? Like we're doing something smart right now in terms of attempting to lay the foundation and lay the groundwork and like shore up some of our processes and just like basic stuff that like slips through the cracks that like, a well-organized company with like paid employees, like, does automatically. And just in terms of like, making sure the email list is updated, now we got Ray writing articles. We want to make sure those are showcased properly and included in the newsletter, and like all this, shit that goes on behind the scenes that involves a lot of people that, I think a lot of people don't really think about. But I feel like now's the time, man. We got, cautiously, I never want to shill anything too much until I know for sure it's a sure bet, but I'm like fairly positive this big ass Halloween thing we've been teasing is going to be a sure bet. And that has other implications farther down the line. And I'm being very cryptic right now, but there's, like you were saying in the very beginning, man, of this podcast, there's like a lot of really exciting stuff going on behind the scenes. And I feel like it's because a lot of the community believes in us, man. We've stuck it out and, sort of proven ourselves to be here for what we stated we were in the beginning. And, maybe that tree is finally bearing fruit.
Yeah. And I mean, it may seem super obvious now, but the ability and like just our tenacity to come back week in, week out, with maybe a couple exceptions here or there throughout the year to take a vacation, but to be there every Thursday, 12 p.m. Pacific, as the meetup spot, like that has paid dividends. People just remember us, even if they don't and haven't been able to come to the WIP recently. I think I emailed this to you last night because I was going through William Peaster, old crypto writer, NFT focused writer that's been working at with Bankless, pushing out the Metaversal newsletter. I was reading the latest headline that caught my eye yesterday about VRMs. And lo and behold, right there in the middle featured is the WIP as like the perfect place to take your VRMs and come into any of these worlds that we travel to. And it was just like, it was a very cool shout out. And as I was reading, I read it because of the WIP, obviously. And it's so cool that people just continue to take note and remember what we're doing, because as these next couple of months are going to be so fun, man, because if the past couple of months are any indication, the experiences are going to get richer. People, what we're able to kind of integrate in any given WIP is just going to really start to blow people's minds when they start to see all these connections and that interoperable future that we talked about last week really manifest. And it's only going to get crazier. And making sure that our foundation and like the simple shit and simple processes that we've set up are simple enough to scale, which I think we're getting them in a place where they are. Woo, they're really going to pay dividends. So this point and whatever is about to happen is probably the most exciting. We're just like tingling with this like excitement of what we know is coming, and it's just not here yet today. Just a couple more weeks.
Yeah. No, but it's, yes, exactly, dude. It's also good. And I feel like, there's been a handful of people in the weeds with us, from the very beginning. And again, man, going back to this hype cycle and the, sort of explosion of this concept of the metaverse that we were already neck deep in when it sort of became like public vernacular, and then like Facebook piled on like all this shit. And I feel like we sort of, got lost in the shuffle of that hype cycle, despite being very much like the default experts in this like very, very specific niche, along with a handful of other people, and anyone who's been around, knows who these people are. I don't even need to, name names. But I feel like, and then everything died out and the metaverse is dead, and then NFTs died, and then, AI, came and is here to stay, but people thought it was a fad, and, everyone's always on to the next thing. And the metaverse is like 4 or 5 things ago, I feel like at this point. But I also feel like it's good, man, because I think we've started to really solidify our reputation in the public eye of the people that matter within the industry, and of the most like well-educated people on this specific niche, which I feel like is a very important niche and will not always be a niche, but for now it is. And we've been pushing it for a long time. And it felt like, suddenly the ocean opened up and swallowed us up in the shuffle of like all this other shit, but then they all moved on to other things. And now we got this thing going, man. For several years now, we got some good infrastructure that is manageable based on like our very solid experience that we're putting in place. And I feel like people are starting to recognize, right? We're not drawing 1,000 people each week or whatever, but our numbers are increasing, and you got to have a certain level of knowledge to even get in the door and appreciate what we're doing in the first place. And it's not for everybody. And I dig it, man. I feel like we've got a really good thing going that it's not that I was unsure of it for a while, but, I feel like we were sort of searching for what our place was within the context of this larger space once things exploded. And it feels more and more like our place is at the very fucking center of it, like it was in the beginning. And I hope we lay the groundwork so that doesn't change.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like what we've created has grown pretty strong, deep roots. It's just we can continue to grow with like the space at this point. We ran early experiments for like different time zones and stuff like that. Like if we ever need to get back to that place, we can do it. But I think for the moment, just keeping our focus on the in-world experiences and making sure that we're tapping anyone that's doing the coolest, latest shit in that space, like that should be enough to keep propelling us forward. And we're not the only ones that are doing things in this space, right? And we're not actually early anymore, because like you were talking about like 4 or 5 hype cycles ago, like metaverse and metaverse land, and like Facebook changing their name to Meta to orient around the metaverse. Like everyone knows and has heard I don't know if they know what it means, but everyone's heard these terms before and they're familiar with what we're doing, right? And that mind share, you no longer have to fight the early battle of, oh, let me break down all the basic simple shit and try to explain what we think the metaverse is. People kind of get it. It's like a virtual experience, whatever. And now we just lean into the good stuff and let people know that, oh, this is actually an easy to experience like metaverse meetup where you can have tons of fucking fun and come and get at least one free thing from like Fabiano Speziati and his wife Patrizia, right? At the very least. But more than likely something more than that and more memorable. And we're documenting everything at the same time. So you can come back and refer folks to what we're doing and people can be like, oh, okay, that's what you did last Thursday or whatever. So dude, I think we're well positioned. We're going in the right direction. And anyone else that wants to hop on with us, our DMs are always open.
Yeah, I think so too, man. You know, and I think back to some of like our early conversations about like when NFTs were just like, you know, becoming a thing. And, you know, and we were both like, you know, this is very interesting, right? In terms of like a crypto nuance. And this could be the thing that's sort of like Trojan horses, like a lot of people into the space who aren't inherently interested in crypto, but they are interested in digital art or like monetizing their skill sets, like, et cetera, et cetera. And we were like, obviously pretty on point with, you know, our thoughts on that early on. But I sort of like get the same, like similar vibes with the WIP in terms of like, you know, it's a great vehicle for sort of Trojan horsing some people who are interested in what we're doing, but like aren't ready to dig into the blockchain and all of like the, you know, really bizarre nuances of it. And we're framing, you know, and I was looking at the Paradox's video actually a couple times from this past one that I posted yesterday.
My favorite video so far. That was one episode. That's fucking anyway. Continue.
Right. It's so good, man. And you know he's I mean his videos are always really good, but our experiences recently have like really leveled up his ability to showcase our experiences as well, and happy to see he's taking advantage of that. But you know, and I'm watching it and I'm like, dude, it does sort of, if you were to look at this and have no idea what was going on, you would think it was like a video game or like a bunch of people like goofing around in like some like Roblox side quest or like something like that. And and in some ways I'm like, this sort of waters down what we're doing when, you know, when in actuality, what we're doing, we're on like a Web3 platform with interoperable NFTs, like showcasing decentralized technology, you know, all this shit that's like, you know, what we're actually doing within the mask of like dancing avocados and like cars crashing through giant Twitch screens and like all this stuff. And I feel like that's sort of what NFTs did for the space, right? They added this element of like stickiness and fun to sort of the semi-casual people coming into the space. And I feel like we do a pretty good job of that, man. And we're not the only ones who do that or who have tried to do that. But I feel like we do have our own little corner where not a lot of people are creating like really fun, immersive experiences with the intent of like showcasing like really fucking dope, like bleeding edge technology that has like, you know, applications way beyond what you can do with it with this frog, but also what you can do with it with this frog is really fucking fun and cool. Come check this out. I dig it, man. And I feel like that's something that just needs the right catalyst or amount of eyeballs on it to like really, you know, find its place in the larger ecosystem where, you know, I feel like we've sort of been, you know, a diamond in the rough for a while.
Yeah. I mean, I think other projects that are still here are leaning into the fun part. Like it has to be fun. If it's not fun, it's not going to work. And it's heartening to see other builders focusing on that side of things. I mean, Paradox and Code 9.0, I think, are just, what they're doing is elite. But they're not alone, right? Like Ash Hyperfi, Metageist, and his whole crew, Cold Crypto Art, is like their whole focus is fucking weird fun in these spaces, right? And creating spaces where more artists feel comfortable experimenting and having crazy, weird times together. And it's spreading. And Ben down in New Zealand with his team, like having fun with what they have built out, like continuing to add things to the to-do list and all of that. Like it's spreading, and there's more folks that really do understand like what needs to be focused on more before like money or sustainability comes into it. Because if you focus on the latter too early, it just becomes staid. It doesn't feel real or like alive anymore. And that's the exact opposite of what this space is. This is the always on kind of opportunity space, and experiences and digital destinations are where people will keep going over and over, just because they'll eventually associate coming to these things with just a great time and a way to kind of like blow off steam or whatever the vibe is at any of these different digital destinations and events that end up popping up over time.
Yeah, 100%, dude. There was this great exchange on Twitter that I saw earlier this week or sometime around then, just between like, I'm pretty sure Ben runs the Crypto Voxels account, and I'm pretty sure Ash runs the Hyperfi account. These are skeleton crews doing some of the coolest things, but I forget what the question was to Crypto Voxels, but then Crypto Voxels was like, I don't know how to do this unless Hyperfi has some wizardry. And then like Hyperfi responded to Crypto Voxels with like some answer that I didn't pay attention to or didn't understand, that basically said that they weren't sure either or something. It doesn't even matter. But the point is, I'm like, dude, this is fucking cool, right? Like this culture where like, in theory, these are like platforms that are competing with each other, but they're actually like here in public exchanging information and like, sometimes like retweeting each other's tweets and everything. And I'm like, dude, we like did that. Not like you and I, but like collectively, like the community and the people like really driving the vision of this metaverse, like, sort of built, and Ben and Ash from Hyperfire included in this, conversation. Like, we've managed to collectively like create this culture where people do seem to be building towards like a greater thing. And, even though we all have our own projects going on and everyone's trying to survive and this and that, like, it's this market, I feel like, has really shown who is here to try and build something bigger and not like, wait for the next hype cycle to dip kind of thing. And I don't know, man. I mean, we've mentioned this a bunch of times in our recent podcasts, like, somehow like the bear market has like a lot of silver lining and good vibes if you know where to look.
Yeah, no, it's all about the vibes. Yeah, man. And super stoked for what we have planned. I mean, been working with Metageist, who's been putting together.
Ooh, say more, man. I'm a little bit out of the loop with this one.
Oh, yeah. So actually, it wasn't Metageist that spearheaded this. It was an artist by the name of Petio, who brought together Zigor, VR Human, Crypto Spectre, Crypto Clay, and Metageist to have like a larger collaborative collection of metaverse sculptures, essentially. So tomorrow we're going to head in and check out the first collection of figurines of the future, is what they've called the collection. Take a little private tour with the participating artists in their On Cyber gallery. I don't know if there's going to be any monster trucks this time, maybe spaceships or something like that. But this all kind of popped off, of course, after the monster truck tour of Metageist's world, where he had some of his figurines that folks could collect, right? But then I hopped into Cody's On Cyber gallery of his like metaverse sculptures that he kind of is exhibiting, and it was just like, holy shit! Because of the tokenization of these metaverse sculptures, it's you can see all the underlying information, like who created it, like who owns it, all the things that you kind of take for granted and just kind of forget about if you're in the like a traditional game experience where you're just in a world and it's like, wow, this all looks amazing, but you don't ask any other deeper questions like, does anyone own this? Like, who was the artist that created all of these things? Like the things that give more meaning to places and spaces in real life that we just have been conditioned over the past like 4 or 5 decades to think or not think about in the digital context are starting to manifest. Anyway, it's a long-winded way of explaining that folks like Metageist and all the artists that are helping build these like metaverse digital virtual artifacts and sculptures that are going to continue to populate these virtual spaces that we inhabit. Like we're getting more of a sense of these places and spaces and faces. And it's really fucking cool because you're walking around in real time listening to this history that like when we pop out and go away, like if people didn't listen to that, they won't get the history. But because more people do know the history, we're able to tell one another and spread it. And yeah, anyway, making history Thursday is what we're going to be doing, the long and short of it.
No, dude, that's really cool. And I've often thought of that myself, how like, and it wasn't really before like the introduction of like, you know, NFTs into Web3 and everything. But I'm like, you know, thinking about some of the video games that I used to play, and, you know, a lot of the creators of these, of the art, of the virtual environments and everything sort of just get buried in the credits and everything, where, you know, it's actually like a fundamental like part of the experience and everything. So, having some sort of like even just like a layer over those things, or you know, and you know, in this context we're like going to look at art, so it of course makes sense. But you know, more attribution to these creators and builders and people who have been around doing this thing like long before, you know, it was, you know, put on the blockchain, I feel like is sort of overdue and a really positive thing.
Yeah,
do that. Sorry, go ahead.
No, just leaning into the history of these spaces. Like a long time ago, years ago, one of my favorite things to do was like fly around the old Origin City. And I know Easy in Crypto, if he's listening, he remembers a few of those sessions where we just booked time and flew over Origin City, and we were able to see some of the early places where we held WIPs, and we're like, oh shit, do you remember when we went to Sparrows and we were planning that like big crazy WIP? Or, oh, do you remember when we went to the NFT 42 studio and we had that crazy WIP over here? The pirate ship, when we found it, we're like, what the fuck was that? Right? Like just remembering these events, or that field trip to No Shots shoe store, like on the day that CryptoVoxels broke, except for that one entrance. The history of these spaces is really cool. And what you and Fractilians have been building out with in Hyperfy in our Ground Zero location, like every subsequent WIP will leave a new like artifact or token behind. Like if you go into hyperfy.io/the WIP right now, like in the distance, you'll see Metageist's Scout, like floating figurine in the sky. You'll see the Mocha mosaic on the floor from that episode. You'll see remnants of Dat Ogar's appearance. You'll have portals to like the Moonbase that Paradox and 9/0 had set up with the race last week, right? You'll get portals to like the sound stage that we had previously. Cody's DI's Legends sculptures that are chilling in like a massive scaled way. The different Code Trip monster trucks that are probably still laying around from last week, right? All these different mementos and like parts of history that are just still there to remind us of what was there before. I love that shit. It gives me such a sense of like proper home in even in a virtual digital way.
Yes, dude. You just gave me like I was thinking about that Metageist. We always like, you know, sort of come back to some of the iconic WIPs, and I feel like that Metageist WIP is going to be one of those, like alongside with like the trip to the shoe store with No Shot, and you know, early on. And I'm like, man, I feel like that. The touring around with the, you know, riding shotgun with Metageist driving around his thing, you know, was just such an incredible like experience for so many people, you know, followed by a trail of like monster trucks and everything. It was, you know, just one of those things. Shit, where was I going with that thought? I'm losing it now. Oh, I remember, man. You gave me a good concept. I'm like, dude, we should, you know, thinking back on our episode a couple weeks ago when we were talking about how like we are the lore, and then you're talking about all this like lore built into the WIP parcel, but also throughout like Origin City and like all these places. I'm like, dude, we should definitely do like some sort of event called like a WIP down memory lane, where we like, you know, have like a rolling tour of like some of the iconic spots. Maybe we can like bring back some of the, you know, speakers or people who like, you know, contributed to those events or like something like that. And it just has a nice ring to it, right? A WIP down memory lane.
No, 100%. years ago, Tubador and I were talking about this sort of concept. Like he had wanted to arrange tours for the same purpose of just kind of telling people like what happened here before, because it's so easy to miss. But yeah, whip down memory lane. It's going to happen.
Dude, that'd be awesome. Eventually, you know, the whip becomes like such an amazing thing, and like, but not everyone can, get to it or whatever. So we have like other people giving like recap tours of like what happened like during that episode.
Yeah, Ray, are you taking notes? Your blog is going to turn into a tour guide position, FYI.
Yeah, dude. Or we get like AI Rizzle and AI Matt to like just recreate it, on a loop when we're not there. Dude, one interesting observation that I also made that I meant to mention earlier, in terms of like our consistency and having that consistent time. Thursday, 12 p.m. Pacific time. And it sucks for some people because it's, not in a great time zone for them. But I feel like that consistency has been invaluable to us because if you notice, man, no events really get scheduled over that time slot for like anyone else doing anything anywhere. Like nobody fucks with that time slot. And every now and again, something pops up then. But I feel like, we've sort of claimed that. And, and I think that has helped us a lot. Just knowing that is going to be the thing, if you want to attend one, you can't make this one, figure out the next one. It'll be the same time, same place, same day.
Yeah. Yeah. And like this was sort of intentional picking Thursday at that time slot because it's like you're closer to the end of the week, right? Like folks are already getting like in a good mental space. Thursday at noon, it's like, well, what does anyone really have going on then? Even if it's like afternoon, like on the East Coast or like evening in Europe, which is the case for a lot of folks that attend, people are generally in very, very good spirits and there's nothing else that's happening then. And the fact that people showed up in the first place, I was like, all right, cool. Like this is a good date time. And I just know that people need consistency and they need something that they can depend on. So just sticking with that until now has been a good decision, I think.
Yeah, man. I agree. It's probably one of the more consistent things like in my life over the past several years in terms of like it being that consistent, aside from this podcast, which is also pretty fucking consistent. High five, dude. Killer episode of the WIP coming up tomorrow. Killer event, coming up tomorrow. We have not spilled the details about Halloween, but we'll try and drop some alpha during the WIP tomorrow. So make sure you come out for that. Get the things. Yeah, man. And exciting. We had Broadside hit us up. We're lining that up for November. That'll be dope. Got a lot of exciting stuff coming up.
Yes, we do. All right, brother. Well, I'll see you tomorrow in the metaverse then.
All right. Later, man.
Peace.